Hello, this is Little Green Ghouls, and welcome to Fear Street Explored, where your worst nightmares live. This week, I'm excited to visit Missing. I found this book to be pretty decent. I'm used to stories like this focusing on missing friends or children, so to have the parents go missing was a fun shakeup. I found elements of this book to be a little predictable, but it was well balanced by some batshit twists towards the very end. I mean, we have a full-on cult running around in this one. It's another one that's worth checking out for sure. This 1990 cover is hilarious. The mixture of early 90s fashion, big hair, and this strike a pose that the illustrator chose to go with makes it something else. I can't say it's inspiring any sort of fear in me, but I sure do enjoy it regardless. Our front take says, "First their parents disappeared, then the real terror began," which is a nice hint at the plot of this story. Our back take says, "Please help, our parents are missing," which is a little redundant, but let's check out the full blurb on the back. What would you do if your parents didn't come home? Didn't call, left no note? At first, Mark and Kara Burrows aren't terribly alarmed. Their parents have stayed out late before. But then other things start to go wrong. Mark's girlfriend Jenna breaks up with him and suddenly disappears. The police don't seem at all interested in finding Mark and Kara's parents. And their mysterious cousin who boards with them seems to be spying on their every move. When murder strikes, Mark and Kara learn their terror is only beginning. Someone wants them to disappear too. But why? The answer lies deep in the Fear Street woods. But will they live long enough to find it? Okay, now let's start this summary. The book opens with an introduction to Kara, although it took 10 frickin' pages to learn her name because she's too busy yammering on and on about her wonderful jock brother Mark. Kara and Mark are newish to Shadyside and live on the titular Fear Street itself. But don't worry, Kara has already made friends with some Fear Street regulars, Lisa and Shannon. Lisa's been in the New Girl and the Surprise Party, while Shannon just appeared in the Surprise Party. Brother Mark has taken a liking to a girl named Jenna Rawlings, who's new to the series. Kara and Mark's parents don't approve of Jenna, but their opinion won't matter much because these parents have gone missing. One night, the parents fail to arrive home, and the two teens don't think much of it. In fact, they actually have a party. At this party, Corey from the New Girl and the Surprise Party makes appearance, and we have some PG-13 party shenanigans with some beer and dancing, while Mark and Jenna make out aggressively on the couch. Kara answers the door and is surprised to find a disheveled-looking police officer titled Captain Faraday. Kara doesn't know her parents are missing yet, so she's puzzled why a cop is at her house. It turns out he's just investigating a burglary 3 houses down and wanted to know if anybody saw anything. Kara has seen nothing unusual, so he just leaves her with his personal card in case anything weird happens. This is Fear Street, so that probably won't take very long. I'm already suspicious of Captain Faraday, but I have no justification for it. Maybe because he's not in a cop car and is just driving some old Chevy truck. Kara returns to the party and finds a big pool of vomit courtesy of Corey, but it's just a prank, bro. I guess Corey keeps fake vomit on hand at all times. Kara ends the party, but still can't pry Mark and Jenna off each other. She taps her swatch and tries to give them a hint that they need to wrap it up and send Jenna on home. Also, I had no idea swatches were a thing, but they are wonderfully early 90s and now I kinda want one. According to Google, they were considered a technological breakthrough at the time because they had like 50 parts, whereas the typical watch has 90 plus, so they were able to be cheaply made without sacrificing quality. Fancy. Jenna ends up catching a ride with Corey, then Kara and Mark try to 10-second tidy up their house so their party can go unnoticed by their parents. Kara keeps throwing hints that her parents aren't the most traditional, they're very young and are super special computer scientists of some nature who travel lots for work and stay out all night occasionally. They also move the family around the country often. Kara then worries maybe their car broke down and they had to walk through the Fear Street woods because she's heard stories of people walking through them and then losing all sense of who they are once they leave. I'm happy with any story that involves the Fear Street woods. They're becoming my favorite Shadyside location. She finally has the sense to call her parents' office to see what's up, and is impressed that it's a direct line that doesn't have to go through a switchboard. However, she's then dismayed to find that the house line is dead. Kara and Mark then hear footsteps up in the attic and briefly panic before remembering their mom's distant cousin Roger is boarding with them for a bit and living in the attic. I feel like that's something most people just wouldn't forget. Roger is of course quiet and strange because why wouldn't he be? This is a Fear Street book. Kara also drops a tidbit of information that they usually have some young college guy boarding with them in the various cities they lived in, so they don't think it's that unusual. I'm calling it now. These parents are up to no good and are spies or some shit. Roger seems very concerned that the parents aren't home and didn't leave any sort of note, but the kids think this is typical for them to be terrible communicators. Kara decides to check their parents' bedroom for some sort of note just in case, but freaks out in a chapter cliffhanger. We then shift perspectives to Mark's point of view as he wonders why the hell Kara is freaking out over some messed up bed sheets. Kara explains that their parents are neat freaks, so it's weird that their bed is a mess, a lamp is knocked over, and that the window is open. Mark is not much of an investigator because he doesn't think that's that big of a deal. Kara then starts screaming again as she notices somebody standing behind the bedroom curtain. Mark springs into action, ready to toss this mystery person out the window, but it just ends up being Roger. He claims to have been looking out the window after checking for a note and didn't hear them come in. Kara doesn't buy this, but Mark believes him. Kara notices that Roger is holding a small black box and questions him on it, but he just insists it's his Walkman without headphones and quickly skedaddles out of the room. Kara continues to be the observant sibling because she notices an unmarked van across the street that she hadn't noticed before. My first thought would be the burglaries mentioned earlier, but I guess not. They get ready to head to bed when Kara finds a very strange object in her parents' bed. It's a small monkey skull carved from ivory with sparkling rhinestone eyes. Mark examines it and can't get over how cold it is to touch. Like, it almost burns him from being so cold. We then jump to Mark trying to fall asleep in bed, but he can't because he's too busy worrying about his parents and thinking about Jenna. He stares out the window for a bit, when he also notices the van, except this time he spots Roger racing across the yard and hopping into the side of it, so they're in cahoots. Mark then notices the bedazzled monkey skull on his dresser and has no recollection of placing it there. He decides to sneak up into Roger's room to see if he can find anything suspicious, but as he's walking towards it, Roger suddenly appears from behind all sweaty and out of breath. They interrogate each other for a bit, and Mark lies about heading to the bathroom, while Roger lies about going for a midnight walk to clear his head. Mark heads back to bed and has a restless night's sleep. In the morning, he's surprised to find the monkey skull staring right at him by his alarm clock, and he chucks it across the room. He then races downstairs with Kara and is scared to see that their parents are still missing. These two little heathens then proceed to have frosted flakes with a bottle of Coke poured on top because they're out of milk, which is repulsive. Mark gossips with Kara about Roger, and she wastes no time wanting to confront him about the van situation. They race up into the attic, but Roger's already gone for classes because I forgot to mention he's supposedly a college student. Kara does some snooping around and discovers none of his college textbooks have been opened, and the notebooks are all empty, so she's having his doubts about his college enrollment. Kara continues to be a better detective and then comes across a handgun hidden in Roger's underwear drawer. I'm telling you, these people are spies. I've watched The Americans like 4 times, so I'm an expert now. We then jump back to Kara's perspective as she's shouting at Mark to stop messing around with the loaded gun. He puts it back, and then they try to hide all evidence of their snooping. Kara then heads over to Miss Fisher's house next door to see if her phone is working. Miss Fisher is shocked that Kara's parents would just stay out all night working without any sort of communication attempt. She then reveals her phone has been working just fine, so only Kara and Mark's phone has been dead. Kara tries to call the office, but no one answers the phone, not even the front desk. She calls the phone company and lets them know their phone is down, and they promise to send a guy out to fix it. Kara shouts thank you up to Miss Fisher for letting her use the phone, but gets no response, which I think is strange, but Kara doesn't seem to care. As she's walking up to her house, Kara notices her parents' car is still in the garage. Maybe it's just me, but if I had concerns about my parents being missing, one of the first things I would have checked is the garage for their car. The kids waste no time. They grab the car keys and a road map so they can head to their parents' office at Cranford Industries to find out if they actually ever made it to work. It's worth noting that Cranford Industries makes weapons for the government, which seems like a very spy thing to infiltrate. While driving, they pass the mystery van at the end of the block, and Mark stops to ask the guy driving if he's waiting for Roger. The guy in the van gives them a big smile and plays dumb, but Mark knows the guy is lying. They reach Cranford Industries, and they have to get past the security gate, and the guy running it doesn't seem to have any record of their parents working there, but lets them through anyways. We then spend way too long having these kids ask various employees, all the way up to the CEO, if they know their parents. Essentially, no one has heard of their parents, and they haven't had any computer work done recently, so these parents are frauds. It cuts to these two sitting in Shadyside Park, and we're back to Mark's perspective, trying to process what they've just learned, and debating if they should notify the police yet. I would think that's an easy yes. They decide to head into school to use the payphone, and Mark dials home to see if the phones are working yet, which they are after Roger answers it to confirm. Mark tries to ask him about the van situation, but Roger just says he has to go and hops off the phone quickly. Mark then spends the day trying to find Jenna and can't. Once at home, he decides to call her. She answers sounding weirdly scared and suddenly bursts into tears and basically dumps Mark right then and there. I didn't think they were really dating yet, just making out. Kara attempts to comfort Mark, but this doesn't go well as he intensely rages at the most basic questions, like, why did she dump you? It's now the halfway point of this book, and the kids finally decide to call the police and report their missing parents. Kara remembers Captain Faraday's card and gives him a call to his direct line versus 911. He jots down all the events of the story so far and informs Kara that there haven't been any accidents in the area, so he doesn't think they're injured or anything. He lets her know he'll be investigating and we either call her back or send a patrolman to stop by. Right before Kara gets off the phone though, she hears a click and realizes Roger's been listening on the other line like a creeper. Kara once again isn't one to back down from confrontation and charges up to Roger, demanding to know why he was listening on the other line, why he crawled into that van, and why he has a gun. Roger gives a list of flimsy excuses that Mark completely believes, while Kara thinks he's full of shit. She decides to follow Roger out of the house without Mark because he's too busy fretting over Jenna dumping him. Mark then gets a phone call from Jenna where she tries to tell him that she has something important to share, but there's sounds of a struggle and the phone goes dead. Mark wastes no time and decides he needs to race through the Fear Street woods to reach Jenna's house because he thinks she's in danger. It's a cold November night, so he grabs a flashlight and a winter coat and marches out into these haunted-ass woods. He's never been in them before, but he thinks if he just walks straight across, he'll pop out in Jenna's backyard. While walking in the dark with a dimming flashlight, he thinks about a story a kid named Arnie told him about the Fear Street woods, where these 5 teenagers went camping out in the woods, sort of on a dare. Everyone bet them they could never spend a whole night in the Fear Street woods, and they bet they could. So that night, they set up 2 tents and built a campfire and were about to cook supper. The next thing anyone knew, these 5 teenagers came running out of the woods, knocking on doors, terrified out of their skulls. They said some kind of monster had attacked the camp. None of them could really describe it. They said it sort of looked like a guinea pig or a white rat, only 100 times bigger. They said it was bigger than a full-grown horse. They were 5 terrified kids, Arnie told me, but most people didn't believe them. The cops came to take them home, and they didn't believe them either. The next day, the 5 teenagers went back to the campsite with their parents to retrieve all their stuff, and finally someone believed them. Because when they got to the camp, everyone could see that all of the campus tents had been gnawed into bits. All of the food had been eaten, even the unopened cans of beans. It seems the creature, whatever it was, has chewed right through the cans. Can't say a giant guinea pig is what I was picturing as the Fear Street Woods monster, but maybe we just learned the origin of Stine's inspiration for Cuddles the hamster from Monster Blood 2. Mark's flashlight is fully dead now, so he's just walking by the light of the moon and is completely turned around in these woods when he hears footsteps behind him. He starts to run, but quickly falls in some sort of trap in a chapter cliffhanger. We then jump to Kara's perspective, and she's in hot pursuit of Roger. It's dark out, and she spots him entering a small coffee shop where the local college kids like to drink and study. She decides to follow him in since she's come this far. She finds him sitting in a booth in the back with a guy from the van. She sees them talking excitedly about something, and they both seem upset. This is enough proof for Kara that Roger can't be trusted, but when she goes to leave the coffee shop, Roger grabs her from behind. They both lie to each other about why they're there. She says she's meeting a friend, and Roger says this is his academic advisor, but it's clear they don't believe each other. Kara races home, and it occurs to her that she won't be safe with her parents missing. She then notices a car seems to be following her as she hurries home. The story jumps back to Mark and his heart is racing, like the drums on a Def Leppard record, because he just fell in a pit. It's only 6 feet deep, so he's able to hoist himself out, only to immediately get knocked back into the pit by a mystery creature that was following him earlier. He wrestles the beast in the pit for a bit before realizing it's some sort of large shepherd dog. He tries reasoning with it, but this dog is hell-bent on eating him, so Mark ends up snapping this dog's neck. Animals continue to not fare well in these books. While looking at its collar, he's shocked to find the bedazzled monkey skull attached to it. I forgot the monkey head was even a thing, to be honest. Mark looks around and notices he's on the edge of some sort of clearing that the dog had been staked out there to guard the area. He doesn't want to know what it's guarding and just wants to get to Jenna's, so he starts to hustle back through the woods some more. It doesn't take long, and Mark is successfully in Jenna's backyard. He starts to climb a trellis to her bedroom, but oops, it snaps, and we're right back to Kara's perspective as she's being stalked by the car. She starts to take off into the neighborhood when Captain Faraday calls out it's just him. He gives Kara a ride back to her house so she can grab a photograph of her parents to use for the missing persons poster. While in the car, she tells Faraday everything, including her suspicions around Roger and about the bedazzled monkey head. At the house, she can't find Mark, but is nervous as a mystery car pulls into the driveway. We don't get to find out who though, because we shift back to Mark's as he's fallen off the trellis. I'm not big on this hopping back and forth between characters in a story like this. Mark ends up getting the wind knocked out of him and slicing open his hand, but right up the trellis he goes. This time he gets in the room and is confused to find no sign of Jenna. Her room is perfectly organized except for a small bedazzled monkey skull poking out from under the bed. He stuffs it in his pocket and is suddenly face to face with Jenna's father, who's pointing a gun at him because he thought Mark was a burglar. We then have a strangely uneventful chapter where Jenna's dad apologizes for almost shooting Mark, offers to bandage up his hand, and informs him that Jenna went to a cousin's house upstate, before leading Mark out the front door. We're then back with Kara and the mystery car, which actually belongs to Lisa Bloom, who, based off her previous book appearances, she must get all the gossip at Shadyside High School, because soon Kara is telling her everything about the situation. Lisa offers to let Kara stay at her house, but she'd rather just wait at home. After gossiping some more, Lisa finally leaves and Kara remembers her plan to grab Roger's gun, except when she goes to grab it, it's already gone. The story then jumps to the next day after school, and the kids are just going through the motions and in a constant state of worry about their parents. Kara remembers that their parents had a friend from work named Wally Wilburn and think maybe they could call him and see what's happening. Unfortunately for them, the phone is dead once again. Luckily, Kara is a phone book sleuth and locates Wally's address, so the kids can just drive over and chat with the man. We then have an awkward scene where these kids pretend to need to use Wally's phone to call their parents, and he pulls out the company directory that does in fact list their parents as working there. Kara and Mark think this must mean the CEO at Cranford Industries lied to them and probably deleted the files on their parents or something. They then head back home to find the van parked outside their house again. Every light in the house is on, and Kara and Mark creep around uneasily, calling for Roger. They head up to his room, and surprise, they find him dead with an arrow in the back of the neck, shirt covered in blood. Captain Faraday then appears from behind the door holding a bow and asks Mark why he shot Roger, since everyone knows Mark is an avid archer. Faraday leads the kids to the living room when the man from the van bursts into the room demanding to know what's going on, and Faraday shoots him 3 times in the chest, dropping the guy dead to the floor. Faraday then uses the house phone to call for backup, the issue clearly being that the phone is dead, which Mark confirms once Faraday steps out of the room, so Faraday is no good. Mark then has to try to think of a way to warn Kara that Faraday is the villain here, while he sits across from them on the living room couch. He tries being subtle, but it's useless, so Mark just tackles Faraday. This results in Faraday pulling a gun on the kids, confessing to having killed Roger, admitting that he's an ex-cop, and demanding that they tell him where the parents are. Kara and Mark clearly don't know, since that's the basis of this entire book, so Faraday threatens to kill Mark next. He lowers the gun to Mark's head, but doesn't shoot because, surprise, Jenna appears with a hunting rifle aimed directly at Faraday. She fires a warning shot and then makes him drop his gun. They end up locking Faraday in the garage and following Jenna out back into the woods. They pass by the clearing in the woods Mark came across earlier when he killed that dog, and they can see it's currently lit up by hooded people holding candles. Jenna mentions how her dad tried to get her out of the way by shipping her out to her cousin's house, but she hitchhiked back. Jenna then says they'll need to stop by her house and pick up some robes before the ceremony starts so they can save their parents. All of this is a lot to take in because we're suddenly moving towards some cult fuckery. While getting robes from Jenna's basement, she states how she knew her dad was in the Brotherhood, but didn't know that they killed people, so when she found out what they were going to do to Mark and Kara's parents, he made her break up with Mark and sent her away. The kids get robed up and head into the woods to do some cult shit. Everybody grabs a candle and circles up around 2 hooded people wearing white monkey masks, just like the bedazzled ivory monkey skull. The 2 masked people in the center of the circle are suddenly unmasked, and we finally see Mark and Kara's mom and dad. Another hooded man in the center lowers his hood, and we can see it's the CEO of Cranford Industries. The CEO starts rambling about taking back the government from the criminals and giving power back to those who deserve it. He then moves on to how there be no traitors among the Brotherhood of the White Monkey, and that vengeance must be swift and violent. He then pulls out a blade, and it becomes clear that Mark and Kara's parents are about to be slaughtered. Mark reaches into his pocket and chucks the bedazzled monkey head at the leader, but he misses. This provides a distraction though, and the parents are able to knock the CEO to the ground and grab a gun, while other cult members flee into the woods. Their parents announce that they're FBI agents and they've been investigating this cult. That's close enough to spies for me. We learn that the Brotherhood of the White Monkey wanted to overthrow the government and come down hard on crime. This included taking the law into their own hands when they felt like it was necessary. Their parents infiltrated the cult, but were discovered and almost executed. Mark and Kara then tell their parents that the van guy and Roger are dead and were both killed by Faraday. Apparently, Faraday is unrelated to the cult situation and was just out for revenge on the parents for a separate situation where they got him convicted for racketeering. This may be the most convoluted Fear Street so far, but I'm still enjoying it. We then jump to this family having hot cocoa while cops literally haul Roger's dead body out of the house. This is some top tier Stine forced happy ending scene. The parents give us even more cult information as we learn the CEO had big plans at Cranford Industries since they manufactured military weapons, so the Brotherhood of the White Monkey had planned on going full on domestic terrorist. A few days later, the family's packing up the house because the parents are off to another mission, so I guess we won't be seeing Kara and Mark on Fear Street in the future. Jenna stops by to give Mark a bedazzled monkey head with a note in its mouth that reads, "Can you keep a secret? I love you." And that's how this book ends. Jenna's dad was in the middle of a murder cult, but don't worry, she loves Mark and that's all that matters. Overall, I thought Missing was a fun story that got a little sloppy towards the end. I love the imagery of this cult and creepy monkey skulls doing evil shit out in the Fear Street woods. I didn't love that Faraday was separate from the central story though, and think Stine should have tried to work him into the cult plotline in some way. I keep expecting Fear Street to be causing some sort of supernatural elements to these stories, but so far it's just like Fear Street is home to wild shit out of sheer coincidence. I'm gonna give this one 3 out of 5 monkey skulls. I had a good time with this book. I just keep hoping for more for the Fear Street stories, so maybe I need to adjust my expectations. Okay, for Fear Street deaths in Missing, there were 2. First, we had Secret Agent Roger getting taken out by an arrow to the neck. Then, we had Secret Agent Van Guy getting blasted 3 times in the middle of the living room. This brings our Fear Street series total to 4 deaths. In Fat 90s Moments, we had 9, and they were kind of fun this week. These included swatches, switchboards, Walkmans, using road maps, payphones, listening on the other line, Def Leppard, phone book sleuthin', and the Grateful Dead. This brings our Fear Street series total to 27. For useless adults, it's not nice to speak ill of the dead, but Roger and Van Guy were pretty terrible secret agents that did jack shit to protect Kara and Mark. This brings our Fear Street series total to 4. In What's Your Favorite Scary Movie, we got one mysterious phone call with Jenna suddenly being cut short and sending Mark into panic mode. This brings our Fear Street series total to 7. This week in Romance, we had Mark and Jenna as star-crossed lovers whose interactions seemed mostly contained to making out on the couch, but that didn't stop Jenna from sending Mark a love note and a monkey skull at the very end. This brings our Fear Street series total to 5. Our cheesy ending this week is just what I mentioned. We had Jenna falling in love with Mark and giving him a cheesy-ass love note. This brings our Fear Street series total to 4. Well, that's it for Missing. I really enjoyed this book, but I'm sad the cult was so easily dismantled. I was ready to see the Brotherhood of the White Monkey cause more chaos than Shadyside. Next week is actually wrong number. I learned all wikis are not created equal, and luckily commenters pointed out I was about to do the wrong book last week. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Missing. What did you think of our Fear Street cult? How did you feel about the Faraday extra twist? Is Lisa Bloom always in everyone's business? Also, what did you think of my mishmash of clips this week? We had missing people, spies, and cults going on here. I had to branch out of horror for this one, which was fine with me because I feel like these books definitely lean into the thriller side of things compared to Goosebumps. Anyways, as always, thanks again for watching, and make sure you subscribe for
the pride, the love,